Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of having Greg Commins patching in from Santa Barbara, Three Sages Wellness. We're going to talk about the convergence of mobile and physical space. We're probably going to talk a lot more about whatever we feel like talking about. So, Greg, welcome to Halo Talks.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here chatting to you today.
Awesome. So you've got a pretty branded background in the greater Halo sector. So, for our audience, you want to just talk about, some of your past experiences and jobs, which kind of brought you to Three Sages, and then we'll talk in depth about the company.
Sure. Thanks. I think, really my whole journey with, health and wellness began, 20 odd years ago when I was actually a professional athlete. So, I played rugby professionally in South Africa for a couple of years and banged my body around and realized after a while that wasn't really going to be a long-term career for me. So, I did transition, directly from that into owning a sports performance and personal training practice, which I ran for a decade. So I really was in the performance side of life. And then I moved to the US about 11 years ago. And my first port of call was obviously tracking down what I knew, right, which was athlete performance. And so I went and worked for a company called Athletes Performance, which is now Exos. And I was there for about a year and a half. It wasn't a great time to be in business because it was 09, 10, when that whole downturn. But at the time, I was learning a lot about athlete performance and restoration. And that's where the whole restorative elements started coming in because they are huge on just that foundation of restorative work. And, from there, I transitioned into actually another job I worked with was Fitness Design Group, where I headed up the design division on designing spaces, hotel gyms, hospitality, and then obviously looking at multifamily, private residences. So we pretty much ran the gauntlet of being in the space of being an athlete, training people, then designing the spaces. So we sort of get a full understanding of what has to go into actually, creating that well environment. And then from there, I moved from that into opening up Three Sages about 3 years ago. That's where I sort of, during all that time and through all those 2 decades of experience, I started to see some gaps which needed filling, and that's what led us to opening Three Sages.
Cool. So what's the background on the name? I used to work at a firm called Sagent Advisors. So we used to say we were, sage was like wisdom and agent was like we're not conflicted. So we're going to give you unconflicted, sage advice. So give us the background here.
Really looking at it from a holistic standpoint, right? As we all know, trying to find a name for your company, was something which was quite tricky, but, it really stems back, way back into, ancient Chinese culture, that there were the three kings. They taught their people how to sustain, how to live a holistic life. They taught them fire, cooking, milling the fields, all those different things. Mm-hmm. So we looked at it just from the three sage kings were basically teaching people how to sustain themselves. So when we looked in our businesses, it's very much on the holistic look at wellness. It's not just fitness. It's not just, one component of it. It's how we, pull it all together. So that's really where the name came from and how we pulled the Three Sages together and what we are today.
So, when you typically have people come in and say, hey, I'm focused on weight loss. I'm focused on, traditional health clubs. And then you've got a whole nother category of people that focus on, hey, I help you build out your, multifamily, fitness facility, or people doing, at home. So it sounds to me like you've kind of taken almost like every element of what you've learned over time. And the first, maybe the first group or CEO that says, hey, I actually know enough to be dangerous about each one of these. And now, I could actually give you this omni-channel approach because of your experience. We always say experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. You probably have good and bad experiences, but is Three Sages kind of like the culmination of all this learning?
Absolutely. It's definitely not our first rodeo and not like we're coming to market fresh out of college, so, everyone in our company, we've got a very experienced team, and we've also worked across different markets and different verticals. So we bring that knowledge from being in different fields of hospitality or corporate fitness or, what I was in the athlete side of things. And then particularly I dove for 6 or 7 years heavily into the design of spaces. So that's really what brought everything together was pulling from all this various experience of looking at the built space. And I always like to say, you've got to step outside the box and look in if you want to find a solution. So if you're standing in the middle of that floor, what do we put in the space? Or, sometimes it's not even in a gym. It could just be a common space, an area which is being repurposed. Or, how are people today being served when it comes to wellness? So that's really, we looked at all those experiences which I had, and that heavily impacted where we are today as a company and sort of what we're delivering.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching an investor video by this guy who's the CEO and founder of Restoration Hardware.
Yeah.
And this guy was came up with this phrase that's always stuck with me. He says, people buy with their eyes. He's like, if you don't, and they don't have like price tags in any of the locations. So he's like, I'm basically allowing you to come in here and I want you to experience like what it would be like to live in this. So like, as I see your avatar in the background here, how does your brain work when you go into a space and kind of envision, either standing in each corner and say, hey, is this what I want you to look at? Because look, there's some great architects in the health club industry, but I don't think there's a full appreciation for what you want the person to experience or what mood. Some people like tinker with colors because like they like a certain color, but there's not, a rationale to that. So give us a little insight into how you think about spaces and how you visualize it and how each one's unique.
Yeah, and it's a great question because, ultimately every space is different. And a lot of times, and I've worked on, whether it be inside the multifamily space or hospitality space, no matter what market it is, generally you'll meet the developers, the interior designers, and there's very limited knowledge of the ability to really put together what we call like the functional space, right? How does everything work together? They can make it look beautiful, and they often do. And, I've had great relationships with a lot of interior designers and architects, but we really have to look at the functionality of the space and the programming, right? So, when we're looking at what needs to be programming, what the balance is inside a room, and also the most important thing is it's got to be aesthetically pleasing. We all know that inside the gym industry, there's a lot of steel, metal, which is going in plastic, which is going around. It's pretty hard to make that look pretty, so you've got to look at the soft touches inside the space. But when it specifically comes to programming, you've also got to understand, look at what the human being is going through, right? Like that's a sensory experience. They're going in there. What do they smell, touch, sight, feel? You've got to take all those into account. Like gone are the days where it's just, let's whack down some puzzle tile, rubber floor, put some equipment in and we're off to the races. I think that it's becoming really, really, defining like these spaces a lot more. And there's a lot more competition. You look at the apartment complexes, all of them have gyms now. So who's going to have the prettier one, which is going to get the residents to come there? Hotels, even the budget level hotels are stepping up their game and making that a really class amenity. So really, Pete, the big thing is understanding, who is using it, what is that, how they're using it and how you can make that aesthetically pleasing while functional at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good point. Let's take a side road onto, some of these budget hotels and, obviously there are thousands of them. And when I started, before COVID, I was traveling around, 3 or 4 days a week on an airplane, probably like you. And I typically was selecting hotels either based on how the proximity that they were to a fitness program that I wanted to go to, or I would take a look at the gallery and see how much square footage they allocated towards it. So what are you seeing in the market, or what do you think is going to happen, when development starts to take shape and, instead of a Hampton Inn or somebody like that, basically taking one room and, kind of putting 3 or 4 pieces of equipment, like where do you think we could potentially be headed?
I think it's right now, particularly talking about where we are with COVID, right? I think there's going to be a phased approach to basically coming out of this. I think if we're looking at the different markets, if you look at hospitality, we just this week have inked a deal with the core hotels to basically provide them in-room content for all their hotels in North America and Canada. And we're not doing fitness content. We're doing yoga, stretching, mindfulness, sleep. That's what we focus on because there's a lot of anxiety around those people who are traveling. Mm-hmm. So that's where I see the first port of call is how do we basically elevate the guest room experience? And then the same thing is, when we're looking at the multifamily vertical, we're looking at that as what are they doing, not necessarily inside the gyms because of limited access. What are you doing in repurposing common spaces, which we could create, potentially what we call no sweat zones, like spaces where people aren't going to freak out about someone sweating and breathing heavily next to them, and doing, more of that sort of still community-driven class sessions, safely distancing if they allow that. So I think that's the first point right now is like how we're looking at these spaces and programming them so people can start to feel more comfortable getting into these environments. Then I think the big step from there is when it does start to open up again and we are safe and the COVID is something hopefully in the rear view, we'll start to look at these spaces a lot more. People's attitudes and perceptions of wellness are changing. They've been exposed heavily to virtual content right now. That is like the only solution some people have had to get. So a lot more people are experiencing for the first time what virtual is. And they're getting hooked on it because, they're watching their trainer on Instagram. They're like, they're going on to all these, everyone's gone virtual, right? So now that, I hate to say it, but COVID really has given us a boost because, it's now educating the public on what like virtual content really is. And what that does for us, it allows us to then put that into platforms. When people are coming out of this, they're going to be accustomed to working in some sort of digital platform a lot more. So I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that being integrated in. And I personally feel thinning the gym out and thinning these spaces out to make more functional room. And that's where I see it going. But at the same time, taking in elements of, the fresh air, the bright lights, the spacing of everything. So I think people now are going to become hypersensitive to how these spaces are being designed, short-term and long-term, and also like phasing in what people have become accustomed to using.
Mm-hmm. So when you think about this as an entrepreneur and whether you are raising outside capital or whether you're, giving somebody elevator pitch, you seem to be at like this interesting crossroads of, I'm going to tell you what my business model is. It's probably not going to fully make sense because I'm kind of like your architect. I'm also like your mobile app guy. I'm doing virtual and I'm also giving you a subscription, so how do you kind of fight through the fact that you can't just say like, I'm like like a Calm or a Headspace plus like your architect. And so what have you run into, or what's the best way for you to like stay on the front end of this without people saying, you're doing too much, which some people said to me in the past?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question because, the thing is when you're looking at this space in particular, like, if you look at any fitness brand, they've got multiple different things they're offering. If you're looking at apps, they are a lot of times offering different components. So for us, like, we're very laser focused on what we're offering and what we're doing is that, ours is basically, we're going in and creating this immersive space, which is very much based and grounded and restorative. So we're creating a space, we're holding a space for you within a space. And that's our product, right? That's the 3 Sages wall. Now, like the mobile app is something which we have right now, a great asset, which is actually an add-on to help with marketing for our clients. It's a solution which gives people access to our content when they're not inside the space. So, that's the full 360 degrees we come at this with. But, we very much are focused on not just the short term here. So we're right now going through a cap raise and looking at, getting investment. And this is not something we're looking at for 6 to 12 months. It's where's this market going in 6 to 7 years? So, we know that restorative wellness is booming. We know that people are going to be needing it more and more in this always on society. So for us, like it's, Pete, to be honest, like we're very focused on that's our product, that's our space. We can influence it and we can use our mobile app to either seed the market and get people interested in content, which is king right now. And then we can sort of, as that flows in, that'll become that sort of supportive marketing tool or operational tool for us as we go.
See, the thing that I find interesting about your background and what you're trying to pull off versus, I feel like a lot of corporations right now are saying like, yeah, I got a subscription, wholesale subscription on Headspace for all my employees, or, they want to have a press release to kind of give lip service, if you will, to, oh yeah, I provide that content. Can you explain why that long-term doesn't work and that why, if you don't really have a holistic approach to this and the physical space and the digital and the communication, that there's like a Band-Aid or there's like a prescription?
Yeah, I mean, like here's the thing, right? Anyway, when and also just particularly talking about then, the time we're in right now, which is extraordinary, right, with the whole COVID and thing. everyone ran out and had a digital solution. People were creating solutions. Trainers went on, and, they were creating there's some great trainers out there, but even that, if you're not producing quality content, right, and it's not with a pure roadmap vision of what you're trying to achieve, like we basically are focusing on restorative wellness, restorative well-being. So we know that that's a big part of the future. So when we're looking at that as, we're doubling down on the fact that we're not just trying to throw some, quick makeshift app towards you and repurposing our content. We've been shooting this content for 2 years. We've been analyzing, studying, understanding it. And also a very important thing here, Pete, is that there's some great companies doing amazing content in studios. There's no shortage of that right now. Like you look at the boom of streaming content. It's everywhere. So what we did is we said, well, okay, well, if everyone's going to play inside, we're going to run out the back door and we're going to go play outside, because that's really where you want to be. You want to be in nature. You want to be looking at this. So we don't shoot indoor content. We only shoot content outdoors. So it's like whether it's a yoga session in Ojai, or you're basically doing a meditation in Malibu, or, you're like, we're going to keep on pushing the boundaries of where we're going. It's the Travel Channel meets wellness. That's ultimately what we're trying to achieve here. So what we want to do is, in a long-term vision, is not just give you a short-term fix of, hey, just take this app and give it to people. It's like, no, right now we can give you our mobile app to use in your apartment communities with this beautiful content, which is absolutely positioned to helping people who's super stressed out right now. But let's think about where this goes to after that. Like, what are you actually doing to continue the success and continue this growth and continue this engagement? You have to go into the build space. So now you're going to start giving people that option post-workout run, come stand in front of a 3 stages wall and, use one of our partner, we've got partner content with Hyperice and Rad, or you use one of our yoga sessions for 20 minutes. We've just got this real holistic solution. You can come spend 5, 10, 15, or 20 minutes in front of one of our virtual solutions, and you can completely, sort yourself out from a restoration standpoint. And then, you can take the mobile solution with you and do it in your apartment, or you can take it on the road with you while you're traveling. So that's the long-term vision, is to help people out right now, whether it be helping and repositioning physical spaces or giving them a mobile tool. But when we come out of this, that's when we're going to really boom, because now we obviously have got the attention of the people on virtual, and we have the perfect solution for the build space.
Interesting. So when you talk to hotel groups, and I've gone through on a couple of different projects and assignments that we've worked on, and I get to people that have titles that I'm like, why am I talking to like the facilities manager of why is it the guy who's the CapEx? Like, it's like you're missing the point of what I'm bringing. So over the last 6 to 12 months, have you seen any kind of seismic changes? Are you getting up to, the chief executive officer? Are you getting to, somebody who maybe is like chief revenue officer? Is there like a wellness, like somebody who's head of wellness services? Like what titles and how do you feel about the progression of how that's going? And is it getting closer to making sense to you and as it would to me?
Yeah, I think, when you're looking at it right now, it depends on which market we're in, right? Like, so hospitality, obviously pre-COVID, there were, some brands had very robust teams dedicated to wellness, and it's becoming such a huge, traveling, wellness tourism is enormous. When you look at it, you look at the billions of dollars being spent on that, that's not necessarily just, what we call luxury tourism. It's more around like the road warrior. Are we supporting the 89% of the people traveling around the country? Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of, it depends on what brand you're with. And yes, we have had some very high level conversations with a lot of people higher up, who are in the SVP roles of like looking at what wellness is being positioned. It's not just like right down, in the trenches, someone saying, hey, I've got an idea. Because we also know how long it takes, which we've experienced firsthand, which is one of the hurdles, is working with these hospitality companies. You've got so many different layers of approval that you have to go through. And sometimes by the time you get there, the market's already changed again. So, there definitely is, and then again on the multifamily vertical, you're dealing a lot of times directly with developers who are making a call straight away. And I think it's just, some folks and some companies are really dialed in with wellness, and you can see it. You can know the properties you go to, what brands have doubled down on wellness. You just got to, but at the end of the day, everyone wants it. Everyone wants to have that wellness amenity no matter what market you're in. And it's now coming down to who can diversify in it.
So a number of these types of partnerships that you do, and inevitably someone internally says like, well, what's the return on investment on doing this? Like, well, what's the return on investment of your brand actually dying. So how do you think about like a spreadsheet, or, part of it's got to be, look, just trust me, like this is where everything's going. And, you can't think about this the same way you think about upgrading televisions, or upgrading your beds. Like, how do you attack that part of it?
Yeah, I think, listen, I mean, like a lot of times, whether it be, any of the markets that we mentioned numerous times during this chat, they've all got their different ways of, figuring out the value, right, of what's being done. And a lot of times with wellness, that's always been tricky. It's like, what is the direct thing? Is it causing more heads and beds for hotels? It's really a big thing. It's a retention play. And it's also like looking at that is so if you're in the multifamily vertical, if you have a fantastic, wellness amenity or a lot of amenities, you're going to retain your residents. There's no secret behind that. And I think the same thing in hospitality. If you, like you mentioned early on as well, Pete, is that, you looked at the hotel, like, what do you have for me while I'm traveling? I want to basically come book with you because I've got an elevated amenity. So I think really from that side, it's looking at retention and growth of basically, really rounding out that amenity space. That's been for us is the biggest value, and that's only getting more and more aggressive. And I think when people come out of this COVID era as well, they're going to have to find cost-effective ways to reposition themselves. They're not going to have budgets to go along and completely overhaul their fitness center or put a whole new program in. Some might, but a lot of people are going to be, pinching pennies. So that's where we also come in with our positioning, is that we're a very cost-affordable solution. We're cheaper than the price of a treadmill. Right. But, when you look at the wow factor and how you can market the hell out of this completely new emerging, fast emerging trend of restorative, that's where we're positioning ourselves to really help our clients and our future clients basically grow these amenities, making them more attractive for retention.
Got it. That's great. So, as you move forward here, you said you got a capital raise. Are you looking at the U.S. market? Are you getting inbound calls internationally? How are you kind of managing opportunities?
Right now, we're basically very focused on the US market, nothing international yet. Of course, when we are already talking to hotel brands, even just on content licensing right now, they are international. So like right now, we're looking at the next 12 to 18 months and being very much in the US market. But the beauty of the way we create our content, it allows us to, translate that into other languages down the road. So, we've definitely got an eye on a global market. There's no question. But of course, the US being such a strong fitness and wellness market, this is a great place for us to start. And there's a lot to do here. So, we're in the phase right now of, getting our product out there. We have had, a couple of people sign deals with us. We've also got content licenses. We have strategic partners. Like to say that, we may be pre-revenue, but we're not premature, right? We've been at this and we know what we're doing. And, that's what we're hoping from the cap raise, is just to basically inject some gas into us to push a bit faster and harder, and really sort of, even during, I'm not, it's not a daunting task for me, COVID. It's actually a great opportunity for us. So, if we get the right people to speak to, we feel we'll definitely be able to push through hard.
Yeah, great. One question on, running a company and given your background in other businesses, how did you think about, because you got a pretty awesome all-star team, as part of your management team, how did you think about sequentially adding certain people that you needed?
Yeah.
Or was some of that opportunistic based on, hey, I'm going to find a spot for this player because like there's an A player, I don't want to lose him? Because I think a lot of companies don't necessarily understand, because they haven't done it before, what's my top 5 people? And, I might need a sales and marketing person before I need a director of operations, but they look at an org chart and think, oh, I need a COO because that's like the number 3 thing on a chart. So give us a little insight into how you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, and so basically, Justin Campbell, who heads up the whole sales division for our company, he's the chief revenue officer. I worked with Justin previously at another company, and when I started this company 3 years ago, I was on him then. I was like, come make the move, buddy. We've got something good here. Let's make it go. And he eventually did join me because Justin has had a lot of experience. He's worked at TRX, he's worked with Waterower. He's really run the gauntlet, and he understands that market because also, we're looking at this very B2B, right? So going straight to like B2B, we are going to be pushing out and direct to consumer as well. But what we have with our B2B market is that we sell through distributors. So we've set up, distributors across all key markets in the US, right? And that's where Justin has a real big strength. He's got some amazing relationships, and he's he's damn good at what he does, and I need that, I'm good at selling, but he's brilliant at selling. So, that's why I called that one as quickly as I could, because that's all about our growth, right? The sales side. And then Adam Glickman, who is, he's our CMO on the marketing side. Adam is, vice chair in the Global Wellness Institute. He started the Even Hotels brand, for IHG.
Sure, yeah.
Very, very, very experienced. And he took that brand, he basically, built the whole Even Hotel brand. So Adam is great with understanding, obviously brand activation, the hospitality market. Then myself, obviously have a lot of experience across all verticals. And then, we've, Jeff, who is our chief technology officer, he's not just someone who's been coding for the last 5 years. This is a guy who was pulling apart his Atari box back in the day. He's been in it for 30 years. So
long on Atari. I've missed that game.
Fortunately, yeah. So it's that's the thing. We definitely are. All of us have over 20 years experience in this industry, whether it be technology, marketing, sales, or even what I've come in from, performance and just generally across in design. So that's how we really fill those buckets, out the gates. And because we've got a heavy distributor model, we don't have to bring on 100 salespeople across the US. We showed this to a couple of key distributors and they're all over it. They're like, this is exactly what we've been looking for. So I'm very lucky to have amazing people. And I don't know everything. I can't do everything. And it's all about teamwork. And I absolutely respect and they have a bit of autonomy. They know what they're doing. I let them run it with me.
That's great. So in closing here, you got any quotes that you live by, or things that they say, oh, that comes out of Greg's mouth all the time, but whether it's motivating or reinforcing?
There's a lot of things that come out of my mouth right now I'm probably not going to say on this podcast. But it's I think, it's because I'm a pretty passionate person, and it's one of those things, maybe it comes to my rugby days, you can hit the crap out of me, but I'll keep on coming at you. It's just so, that's how I've really lived my life, is that I grew up in sort of competitive sports, and I grew up with a father who was a phenomenal entrepreneur and sportsman who always taught me grit. And, the biggest thing was just, you're going to get hit so many times, more times than you'll even remember. You just got to keep getting up. And, the startup world, it's not an easy one. It's a tough one. But we've had a lot of times we've had to pivot. So I think, the biggest thing for me, Pete, is I always tell my guys, and ladies who work with our company is that, you just got to keep pushing. You got to keep going, stay the course. That's what it is that we're going to succeed. And that's my belief, is that we are. I feel we're going to become, if not the biggest, one of the biggest restorative wellness companies in the world. And that's my vision. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get there.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, I'm glad we connected, and look forward to not only getting to know you and your team, but also hopefully staying at places that restore me personally. So thank you for creating that opportunity. And, once we're over this COVID period here, let's collaborate some more and see if we can be helpful. Because I think you're on the tipping point here of material change. So keep pushing, and look forward to getting updates.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the time, and great having a chat with you.
Awesome, man. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Good stuff. Later, bud. This is Pete Moore. As you know, I am a big believer in personal development. I got a time-saving opportunity here for you, recommending Dan Millman's 4 Purposes of Life. Go to audible.com/Halo Talks. You want to register there, get a free audiobook. It's $14.95 a month thereafter, giving you things that I do to make myself better, and hopefully it makes you better. Go Halo. Let's play to win.